The entire NBA world shook like never before when word exploded that a massive gambling scandal had been uncovered. Players, coaches, and fans couldn't believe it. The league's reputation was suddenly hanging by a thread. Draymond Green's reaction? Straight up disbelief.
My reaction to the news, I was shocked.
Shaquille O'Neal couldn't hide his disappointment, admitting he felt ashamed.
And I'm just ashamed that they put themselves and put their family and put the NBA in this position.
While Charles Barkley didn't hold back one bit, he called the players involved just plain stupid.
These dudes are stupid.
The tension skyrocketed as whispers turned into headlines, and with prison time now looming over several arrested players, the league's biggest names started speaking out. More than 50 NBA stars have reacted, and what they're saying will leave you stunned.
My reaction to the news, I was shocked. I woke up to that news. And I overslept for shoot-around. So when I woke up, I couldn't really check in on it because I was trying to get here. You know, I got here and they're like, man, you see everything that happened? I'm like, not quite. I only knew about Terry.
Let's kick things off with Draymond Green, the heart and voice of the Golden State Warriors, a four-time NBA champion known for speaking his mind without hesitation. On the morning of October 24th, 2025, Green found himself in rare form. Completely out of sync and running late. He'd overslept and missed the Warriors' shoot-around before their hyped home opener against the Denver Nuggets. But when Draymond finally stormed into Chase Center, breathless and trying to catch up, his whole reality flipped in seconds.
I think when, you take a look, like, the business is the business. I'm not going to sit here and condemn the league for partnering with gambling sports betting companies. Like, the business is the business. It is what it is. I think, I wish everybody well.
The locker room buzzed like a beehive. Reporters shouting, teammates whispering, phones lighting up with breaking news alerts. The gambling scandal had taken over everything. Every screen, every conversation, every headline was about one thing: the shocking arrest that no one saw coming.
Every year they would give us forums on what and what not to do. One of those things where if somebody asks you if a certain player is playing, you say no. So all these guys knew what was at stake. And I'm just ashamed that they put themselves and put their family and put the NBA in this position. We all know the rules, we all know the letter of the law, and it's just unfortunate,
At first, Draymond Green thought the whole scandal was just about Terry Rozier, maybe some reckless bets or off-court nonsense. But when the truth started unfolding, his jaw practically hit the floor. Reports claimed that Chauncey Billups, a respected coach, former Finals MVP, and fellow champion, was allegedly involved in mafia-connected poker rings. These weren't some friendly games either. Insiders said they were high-stakes traps, built to drain wealthy gamblers using marked cards and infrared tricks straight out of a movie. That's when it hit Draymond. This wasn't just one player being careless. This was corruption threatening the entire foundation of the league. The sense of betrayal ran deep. The NBA wasn't just facing bad headlines. Its whole reputation for fairness and competition was suddenly under fire. But instead of jumping on the outrage bandwagon, Draymond did what he always does. He thought before he spoke. Known for his brutal honesty and sharp mind, he broke it down like only he could. Rather than slamming the league or pointing fingers, Green brought a rare level of real-world perspective to the chaos. He reminded everyone that the NBA has long-standing deals with sports betting giants like DraftKings and FanDuel, and that money fuels everything: player salaries, sponsorships, even fan engagement. The business is the business, he said bluntly, his voice steady and unapologetic.
Man, this ain't got nothing to do with damn gambling addiction. This ain't got nothing to do with addiction. These dudes are stupid. Why are they stupid? Under no circumstances can you fix basketball games. Under no circumstances. I love to gamble. The notion, like, Rozier makes $26 million. Him betting, giving people information or taking himself out of games, how much is he gonna benefit taking himself out the game to get unders?
Draymond wasn't about to pretend he was some moral judge. His entire argument came down to one hard truth: money runs the game, from the owners to the players, and everybody eats from the same pot. It grows the pot, he explained, breaking it down like a businessman in sneakers. He reminded people that nobody complains when salary caps skyrocket or when players start signing $200 million deals, all thanks to the booming partnerships that help keep the league rich and thriving. To drive his point home, Draymond used some sharp analogies that had everyone thinking. He said the NBA's long-standing deal with Bud Light doesn't suddenly turn every basketball fan into a heavy drinker, just like the Warriors' partnership with Mercedes-Benz doesn't make him ditch his Kia for a luxury whip. Those deals exist because that's the modern reality of sports. It's business, not brainwashing. But Draymond wasn't blind to the darker side of it all. He admitted that this scandal could shatter fan trust faster than a broken backboard. The whispers about players possibly faking injuries to rig prop bets. That's where it got ugly. Because once fans start wondering if a superstar is sitting out for rest or for a bet, the entire illusion of fair competition starts to crumble. Still, Green didn't call for panic or a boycott. Instead, he called for structure and education. He urged the league to tighten enforcement, educate players better, and build stricter guardrails instead of pretending gambling could just disappear. His stance was clear. The NBA shouldn't fear the betting boom. It should handle it smartly.
No, we're surprised because when you have access and you're at the top of your game, so to speak, as a coaching profession, a player, or whatever, you're at the top of the game, you have access to millions and millions of dollars in this league. So it was surprising that they would put themselves in that position, possibly. It is an innocent until proven guilty. I think the other part is we have to realize gambling is an addiction. So the addiction of it is what makes you make illogical decisions.
While Draymond stood tall defending the business logic, the next NBA star who spoke out didn't share that calm or clarity. His reaction hit way more personal and deeply unsettling. Then came Al Horford, the steady veteran voice everyone listens to, the Boston Celtics anchor and a 2024 NBA champion with nearly 2 decades in the league. While others debated money, contracts, or business fallout, Horford went deeper, straight into the one topic almost nobody wanted to touch: player safety. After 18 seasons in the NBA, Horford has seen everything, from the rise of social media chaos to the intensity of modern fandom. But what he's witnessing now in the era of legalized sports betting genuinely scares him. He wasn't just talking about reputation or headlines, he was talking about human impact, the mental toll on players who suddenly feel like walking dollar signs. The arrests of Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier dominated every headline, but Horford saw something bigger: a system quietly turning toxic. To him, their cases were just the tip of an iceberg threatening to sink player well-being across the entire league. His concern wasn't theoretical. It came from real moments, real encounters with fans whose behavior had changed dramatically. It's much different, Horford said solemnly when asked about the shift in fan interactions. And he wasn't exaggerating. With prop bets flooding the market, fans can now wager on the smallest details. Whether a player hits over or under a certain point total, grabs a set number of rebounds, or even how many assists he gets in a quarter. That obsession, Horford warned, has twisted what used to be passionate support into something dark and personal. It's starting to look aggressive out there, Al Horford warned, his tone calm but serious. The kind of concern that only comes from a man who's seen the game evolve for nearly 2 decades. He spoke with quiet authority, painting a picture that should shake anyone who still believes this is just sports. I understand we're professional athletes and this is the world we live in, Horford said, but I think the league itself has to step in and probably do more to protect the players.
What was your reaction to any of this?
Yeah, I'm finding it out as you guys are, so I don't really have a comment on it.
Is it something that, I know the rules about this are pretty clear and the league does a good job talking to coaches, talking to players about what is and isn't permitted. Does this need to be extra vigilant? Do you even address it with your team as to, again, like, these are the rules, this is what?
Yeah, I mean, we've had 2 meetings on it already. It's obviously on the front of everyone's awareness given the last 2 years, but other than that, there's no other comment.
What Horford was describing wasn't just fan enthusiasm, it was a dangerous power shift. The line between passion and hostility has never been thinner. When a bettor loses money because a player misses a shot or ends 2 points short of a prop bet, it's no longer disappointment. It's personal. That loss becomes a financial grudge, and some fans take it way too far, unleashing harassment online, shouting threats courtside, even waiting outside arenas to vent their rage. The irony stings. The NBA rakes in billions from its betting partnerships, while the players, the faces of the brand, are the ones taking the heat when things go wrong. Horford made it clear, something's got to change. He wasn't calling for the end of sports betting. He was calling for protection and respect. His proposed fixes were smart and grounded in experience. Stronger arena security, tougher rules for fans who cross the line because of gambling losses, and public awareness campaigns reminding everyone that these athletes are real people with real families, not props for profit.
I know everybody that's at play, and I don't like to sit up here and be hypocritical about certain things.
Horford's message hit deep. He wasn't trying to kill the excitement of the game. He was trying to restore boundaries, to make sure the fire of fandom doesn't turn into flames of hate. Basketball isn't just stats and numbers, it's real lives and raw emotions that go way beyond a box score or someone's missed parlay. Al Horford's warning about player safety hit hard, but the next NBA icon who stepped into the conversation didn't sugarcoat a thing. Shaquille O'Neal, the Diesel himself, came through with the thunder only he could bring. When the October 23rd, 2025 gambling scandal exploded, shaking the entire league, it needed a voice big enough to match the chaos. And that's exactly what Shaq delivered. As a four-time champion, Hall of Famer, and straight-up legend who ruled the paint for nearly 20 years, Shaq wasn't about to hold back. On the October 24th episode of Inside the NBA, he turned the TNT studio into something wild. Part courtroom, part confessional, part therapy session. You could feel the tension through the screen.
Good morning. Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Casa Nostra. The men and women up here standing with me represent a small portion of the leadership team that brought profound justice in an era that needed it more than any.
With over 30 arrests linked to mafia-backed betting rings, including names like Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, Shaq said this wasn't just about bad decisions. It was about integrity, legacy, and the soul of basketball itself. He looked straight into the camera, voice booming, and laid it out plain. This wasn't a time for excuses. It was time for truth and accountability. Shaq's reaction wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal, almost fatherly in tone. You could feel the hurt in his voice as he spoke, not as a critic, but as a man who's been there, who understands the temptations that come with fame, money, and power. Even all these guys knew what was at stake, he said, shaking his head. I'm just ashamed they put themselves, their families, and the NBA in this position. His words hit like a hammer, firm, heavy, and full of disappointment. This wasn't some outsider throwing shade. This was a brother calling out family, men he respected, now tangled in a scandal that embarrassed the entire league. What burned Shaq the most was the sheer stupidity of the risk. When he heard the allegations about Terry Rozier leaking his own injury info to manipulate prop bets, Shaq couldn't hide his disbelief. You're making $26 million a year, man. How much more do you need? He snapped, eyes wide, voice echoing through the studio. It was a question that hung in the air, the kind that doesn't need an answer because it already says everything. To Shaq, that was the core of the tragedy. Players blessed with generational wealth, risking it all for pocket change and dirty headlines. Drawing from his own legendary career, where he faced every temptation imaginable but never crossed that line, Shaq spoke with the authority of someone who'd lived through the storm and walked out clean. You all know the rules. We all know the letter of the law, Shaq said firmly, staring into the camera with that unmistakable authority. It's unfortunate, innocent until proven guilty, sure. But usually when the FBI has something, man, they have you. The studio went silent for a beat, because everyone knew he was right. Shaq's words landed like a gavel, final and chilling. If the big man's disappointment was heavy, what came next was pure fire.
FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Casa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchesi crime family.
Enter Charles Barkley, the legend who never bites his tongue. If Shaq brought the emotional gravity, Barkley brought the heat. The 1993 NBA MVP, one of the boldest voices in sports media, wasn't about to let anyone sugarcoat what had just rocked the league. His reaction on that same explosive Inside the NBA episode was a masterclass in raw honesty and old-school accountability. While others danced around theories and context, Barkley cut straight through the noise. He didn't want to hear about addiction, pressure, or bad influences, not when the integrity of the game was on the line. "Miss me with the excuses," he practically barked, slamming his hand on the desk. To him, the scandal wasn't complicated. It was a betrayal, plain and simple. The indictments detailed that Terry Rozier had allegedly manipulated his own playing time, and Chauncey Billups supposedly used his reputation to draw big-money gamblers into rigged games. And Barkley? He had zero patience for anyone trying to soften that story. "You don't play with the game that made you rich," he thundered. As Shaq spoke from the heart, Barkley spoke from the gut. And what followed was pure TV gold. He clashed head-on with co-host Kenny Smith, igniting a fiery debate that split the studio in two. On one side, those who believed addiction and manipulation played a role. On the other, Barkley, demanding straight-up responsibility. Charles Barkley didn't dance around it. He exploded with brutal honesty. His take was sharp, raw, and impossible to misinterpret. "This has nothing to do with a damn gambling addiction," he shouted, his finger slicing the air like a judge's gavel. "This ain't got nothing to do with addiction. These dudes are stupid." The studio fell silent for a second, the weight of his words hitting harder than a dunk in crunch time. Barkley's stance was simple but uncompromising. He drew a clear line between those truly battling addiction and those making greedy, calculated moves for extra cash. In his eyes, there was a massive difference between someone stuck in a spiral, losing their own money chasing bets, and someone deliberately selling out the game for profit. To him, one deserved help, the other deserved consequences.
And the fraud is mind-boggling. It's not hundreds of dollars. It's not thousands of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars. It's not even millions of dollars. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery across a multi-year investigation.
The tension hit its peak when co-host Kenny Smith tried to argue that addiction can overpower logic, that it can make people act out of desperation. But Barkley wasn't having it. He fired back with precision that cut straight to the bone. "The notion that these guys making all this money are giving out inside info, stop that. That's not addiction, that's stupidity." For Barkley, this wasn't cold-hearted judgment. It was principled frustration. He's been open for years about his own gambling experiences, even poking fun at his bad bets. But that's exactly why he felt he could speak on it. He's lived it, and he knows the difference between a bad habit and betraying the sport that made you a millionaire.
The games in the New York area were backed by the Bonanno, Gambino, and Genovese crime families of La Cosa Nostra.
And as the fireworks settled, Barkley pivoted toward the bigger picture, turning his fire on the NBA itself. He sided with Shaq on one major point. The league should have seen this coming. With all the money, betting deals, and access in today's game, Barkley argued, the NBA should have built stricter systems before things ever spiraled this far. Charles Barkley's answer to the chaos was simple but ruthless. Bring the hammer down. He demanded harsher punishments, calling for lifetime bans that would mirror the FBI's no-nonsense approach to prosecution. His message couldn't have been clearer. If the league's gonna make billions from betting partnerships, he roared, then it better be ready to destroy anyone who tries to abuse them. His words lit up the studio, sparking one of the most explosive debates inside the NBA had ever seen.
I know everybody that's at play. And I don't like to sit up here and be hypocritical about certain things.
And stepping into that storm, unshaken and unafraid, was Kenny Smith. Every fire needs water, and that night, Smith tried to be the calm in the chaos. The two-time NBA champion and former point guard, known for his cool logic and sharp analysis, wasn't there to defend the guilty, but to remind everyone that human beings were at the center of this mess. As Barkley thundered about stupidity and greed, Kenny leaned forward, his tone firm but composed. He argued that not everything can be reduced to personal failure, that addiction, even among the wealthy and famous, can twist logic and destroy good judgment. "You'd be surprised what desperation looks like when the pressure hits," he said, cutting through the tension with quiet intensity. Kenny wasn't excusing what happened. Far from it. He was simply pushing back on the idea that every fall from grace comes from arrogance. To him, this wasn't just a scandal about money. It was a mirror reflecting the psychological strain of being in the spotlight, the weight of expectations, and the loneliness that can push even the strongest athletes toward reckless decisions.
We all know the rules. We all know the letter of the law. And it's just unfortunate.
That night, inside the NBA stopped being just a sports show. It became a battle of philosophy between punishment and empathy, between anger and understanding. Kenny Smith made it clear. He wasn't defending the players' actions. He was trying to understand them. His point wasn't about excuses. It was about awareness. He leaned on the FBI's own data, pointing out a chilling example, a wealthy man who lost $1.8 million in a single night. It was his way of proving that gambling addiction doesn't care who you are, rich, poor, famous, or unknown. It can wreck anyone's life when the urge takes over.
The reason I'm mad at Kenny is, man, this ain't got nothing to do with damn gambling addiction. This ain't got nothing to do with addiction. These dudes are stupid. Why are they stupid? Under no circumstances can you fix basketball games. Under no circumstance.
Gambling is an addiction that can make you act completely irrational, Smith said passionately. It doesn't matter your race, your background, or how much money you've got. When it gets a hold of you, it controls you. His tone was urgent, almost pleading, not for sympathy, but for understanding. He was fighting to inject some nuance into a conversation that was quickly turning into a shouting match about greed versus stupidity. The clash between Smith and Barkley reached its breaking point when Smith admitted the numbers didn't make sense. If you're making $26 million a year and risking it to win $50,000, yeah, that's illogical. But then he hit back with the deeper truth. Addiction overrides reason. It doesn't play fair, it doesn't pause for logic, and it doesn't care about paychecks. His argument wasn't moral leniency, it was psychological realism. Smith believed that if the NBA really wanted to prevent another scandal like this, it needed to stop pretending punishment alone could solve it. The league had to understand the mindset that pushes even the most successful people into self-destruction. And Kenny didn't just talk, he acted. In the days after that fiery broadcast, he took to social media, pushing for major reform inside the league. He called for mandatory therapy sessions, anonymous hotlines, and mental health safeguards specifically aimed at gambling-related stress. He warned that while the NBA was cashing in on its betting partnerships and flooding every screen with gambling ads, it was creating exposure without protection. Kenny Smith's message was clear. This scandal wasn't just about bad choices, it was a warning sign for a broken system. He didn't see it as isolated moral collapse. He saw it as proof that the NBA's culture of profit had outgrown its safety nets. His vision called for a balance between prevention and punishment, between discipline and compassion. But while Smith focused on addiction's mental grip, the next voice to enter the conversation shifted the lens to a different but equally dangerous battlefield, the one hiding right in front of us. Enter Steve Kerr, the Golden State Warriors mastermind, a man with 9 NBA championships under his belt as both player and coach. When Kerr spoke on October 24th, just hours before the Warriors' season opener against the Denver Nuggets, the whole sports world listened. His reaction wasn't about playbooks or strategy, it was about the human toll. Kerr cut through all the noise, the FBI arrests, the mafia rumors, the scandal hype, and went straight for the real wound. The crumbling bond between players and fans. In his eyes, the league had unintentionally turned athletes into targets by making betting such a central part of the fan experience. Our players face a lot of wrath from fans, Kerr said, his tone heavy with exhaustion. You could tell he'd seen it all. The hateful DMs, the angry emails, the boos that went too far. He talked about how every missed shot, every turnover, every small mistake could now trigger rage from bettors who felt cheated out of their money. It wasn't about the game anymore, it was about the bet. What used to be harmless passion was morphing into toxic aggression, poisoning the relationship between those who play and those who watch. It's weird, Steve Kerr said quietly. But those two words hit harder than any headline. It was a deceptively simple phrase. Yet it carried the weight of a quiet indictment against the toxic culture the NBA now finds itself entangled in. His tone wasn't angry. It was disappointed, reflective, and tired of pretending that this chaos made sense. The league was pulling in billions from betting deals, yet its players were receiving death threats from angry fans who lost money on a missed prop bet. "It's weird," he repeated, and everyone in the room felt the sting of truth behind it. Kerr drew a sharp line between then and now. Back in his playing days under Phil Jackson, locker room poker games were harmless fun, a way to unwind, laugh, and bond as a team. But now, technology had twisted that innocent pastime into something dark and dangerous. With gambling apps just a tap away, casual fandom had turned into obsessive hostility, where passion curdled into hate the second someone missed a free throw. But Kerr didn't just complain, he offered solutions. He wanted the NBA to move beyond those generic once-a-year don't gamble lectures and instead build real-time protection systems. He envisioned AI-driven monitoring tools that could detect harassment patterns before they escalate, and stricter arena codes of conduct that could ban aggressive fans if they crossed the line, no matter how much they'd bet. He applauded the league's swift suspension of Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups, but said it wasn't nearly enough. The problem wasn't just disciplinary, it was cultural. Kerr called for the creation of a players' union task force focused on gambling awareness, plus partnerships with addiction specialists who could actually give players real-world guidance instead of boring policy lectures. His approach blended logic with compassion, not about punishment alone, but about protecting the emotional core of the game. And while Kerr focused on the external pressure coming from fans, the next reaction would pull back the curtain on something even deeper: the psychological toll players carry long after the crowd goes home. Because on October 24th, 2025, as the league still reeled from the shocking arrests, one man far removed from the drama, Carmelo Anthony, stood in a quiet library in Baltimore, reflecting on it all from a very different place. At the Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore, Carmelo Anthony stood surrounded by memories. His House of Mellow retrospective exhibition was opening, a heartfelt celebration of a career that blended pure scoring artistry with Olympic gold and basketball glory. It should have been a night of joy, of reflection, of peace. But even amid the cheers and nostalgia, the dark cloud of the NBA gambling scandal hung in the air, haunting every conversation, every question, every camera flash. Later that evening, Melo sat down for an interview on CNBC's Closing Bell Overtime with Alex Sherman. And what was supposed to be a casual chat turned into something much deeper, almost spiritual. The retired superstar, now working as an NBC analyst, spoke with the kind of clarity that only comes from experience, not just on the court, but in life after it. Anthony wasn't ranting or pointing fingers. Instead, he offered perspective, a middle ground between the current players feeling the heat and the critics casting stones from the sidelines. He knew both worlds. Having retired in 2023, Melo could speak about the game's past, its brotherhood, its pride, its love, while also dissecting the new reality players face today, where performance isn't just about the team anymore, it's about someone's bet slip. When asked about the shocking arrests of Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, Anthony didn't dwell on the names or the headlines. He went deeper, talking about the mental pressure that's been quietly building inside locker rooms everywhere. "They may say they don't care," Melo said softly, "but they care because it affects them." Those words hit hard. They came from a man who had felt it. The whispers, the boos, the expectations that weren't about love of the game anymore, but about money riding on his numbers. He painted a vivid picture from his New York Knicks days, when Madison Square Garden's crowd could lift him up 1 minute and crush him the next. "Just because you bet on me scoring 25 points and I only got 22. Now you look at me differently. Now I'm losing my skill set," Carmelo Anthony said, a line that cut through the noise like a confession. He wasn't being dramatic. He was exposing the emotional cost of a system that had quietly rewritten what it means to be a player in the modern NBA. He explained how prop betting, once harmless fun, has turned statistical variance into personal indictment. Miss your scoring average by a few points, and suddenly fans question your effort, your discipline, even your worth. This wasn't some abstract theory. Melo spoke from painful experience. He remembered the days when his point totals were just numbers on a scoreboard, not a trigger for thousands of angry bettors online. Over time, those reactions crept into his head, transforming outside noise into internal doubt. That subtle shift, from performance pressure to gambling pressure, is something today's players feel every night, every quarter, every possession. And the irony wasn't lost on him. The NBA's $2 billion partnership with DraftKings had supercharged its profits, but it also created a minefield for the athletes themselves. Every dribble, every missed shot, every free throw suddenly carried financial consequences for strangers betting from couches, bars, and even airplanes. We're playing in a whole new kind of stress, Anthony admitted. His critique zoomed out to the systemic level. He said the real problem isn't just a few bad actors, it's the culture of gambling that's taken over the game itself. From betting kiosks inside arenas to fantasy apps on flights, gambling has woven itself into basketball's DNA. Fans don't just watch anymore, they invest, and when they lose, the anger hits the players first. Yet even as he exposed the cracks, Melo's tone carried something rare: hope. He wasn't here to burn it all down, he wanted reform. There have to be ramifications, he said, but I still believe the league can fix this. He urged NBA leadership to not only punish the guilty, but also heal the cultural rot, to rebuild the spirit of the game before it's too far gone. Anthony's honesty peeled back the emotional layer of the scandal, but the next voice to step forward came from a man carrying both heartbreak and duty. A coach caught between protecting his players and defending the league's integrity. Rick Carlisle. Not every powerful voice came from the players, some came from the sidelines. Rick Carlisle, head coach of the Indiana Pacers, stepped forward with a perspective shaped by both heartbreak and leadership. As a championship-winning coach and current president of the National Basketball Coaches Association, Carlisle stands right at the crossroads of basketball strategy and organizational accountability. And when he spoke, the entire NBA listened. On October 24th, just hours before the Pacers faced off against the New York Knicks, Carlisle faced reporters with visible weight in his eyes. "This is a very serious situation, a shocking day," he said, his normally steady voice carrying an edge of pain. This wasn't just professional disappointment, it was personal. Because for Carlisle, one of the names in the scandal, Chauncey Billups, wasn't just another headline. He was a brother, a teammate from their 2004 Detroit Pistons championship run, a man he'd shared triumphs, locker rooms, and memories with. "I've talked to Chauncey," Carlisle revealed softly. "My heart goes out to him and his family. This is devastating for everyone involved." His words weren't defensive or dismissive. They were raw, filled with compassion, but also the unmistakable sting of betrayal. Yet Carlisle's statement didn't stop at empathy. Wearing his NBCA president hat, he turned his grief into a challenge, a call for systemic change. He made it clear that the scandal wasn't just about individual choices, it was about organizational blind spots that had gone unchecked for too long. He blasted the NBA's recent anti-gambling briefings, mandatory meetings held just weeks before the arrests, calling them too reactive, not proactive. In his view, they were surface-level fixes that treated the symptoms but ignored the disease. "We've got to do better," Carlisle urged, his tone sharpening. "Better education, better enforcement, and better understanding that these lines aren't just blurred. They're erased by the apps in their pockets," Rick Carlisle warned. A chilling reminder of how modern temptation hides in plain sight. He spoke from experience, recalling his own playing days when high-stakes gambling was confined to smoky back rooms, far from the reach of organized crime's digital empire. But today, one tap, one notification, one impulse, and the danger was right there in every player's hand. Carlisle's sharpest critique went straight at the NBA's corporate partnerships. He didn't dance around it. He called for a full independent audit of the league's betting relationships, not just to track revenue, but to expose vulnerabilities, the cracks that allowed crime and corruption to creep into the game. How, he demanded, did celebrity coaches become bait for six-figure poker scams? What safeguards exist to stop team staff from being exploited by organized crime? These weren't rhetorical questions, and they were demands for accountability from a man who's seen the system up close. Carlisle made it clear, whether Chauncey Billups was guilty or not, his arrest revealed gaping holes in the NBA's protective walls. And until those holes were sealed, the league's integrity was always at risk. His words rippled through every front office and locker room in the league. But while Carlisle's call for reform hit hard, the next voice came from someone feeling the pressure inside the storm. A rookie head coach facing the unthinkable spotlight. JJ Redick, the newly appointed Los Angeles Lakers head coach, stepped to the podium on October 24th, his first real test as the man leading basketball's most scrutinized franchise. The Lakers have always lived where basketball meets spectacle, but this time the spotlight was searing for all the wrong reasons. The retired sharpshooter turned podcast star had barely settled into his coaching seat when the gambling scandal landed right on his doorstep. His franchise cornerstone, LeBron James, had been named in federal filings as an unwitting victim of leaked injury information. He wasn't accused of anything, but the proximity alone was enough to send shockwaves through the Lakers organization. JJ Redick's public statement was calm and measured. "It's obviously on the front of everyone's awareness," he said, keeping his voice even. But behind that composed tone, the reality was intense. The Los Angeles Lakers were in full crisis mode. Within hours of the scandal breaking, Redick had called 2 emergency team meetings, pulling players, coaches, and staff together to go over every detail of the NBA's gambling policies, like their season depended on it, because it just might. Inside those sessions, the tone was serious. Redick and his staff dissected every rule and restriction, from prop betting bans to the fine line between fantasy leagues and federal violations. With a locker room that blended grizzled legends like LeBron James and young hopefuls like Bronny, Redick recognized this wasn't just about damage control. It was a wake-up call. "We've reviewed every rule, every scenario," Redick told reporters in follow-up comments, "because this hits close. It's not just about those guys. It's about protecting our house." His words carried conviction but also experience. The kind of discipline forged from 15 years of playing under great coaches, learning what leadership really looks like when the lights are brightest. Behind the scenes, the Lakers implemented tightened communication protocols, new guidelines on social media interaction, and even stricter guest vetting at games. In Los Angeles, a city where Hollywood power players and NBA stars constantly cross paths, Redick knew the risk wasn't just theoretical. Those casual, friendly poker nights that once sounded harmless could now be career-ending traps. What made Redick's approach different was his dual identity, part player, part intellectual. He'd spent 15 years in locker rooms understanding team dynamics, and later as a podcast host, he'd mastered how to break down complex issues with precision and clarity. Now standing at the helm of the Lakers, JJ Redick embodied his podcast mantra, "The Old Man and the Three." Unfiltered truth, no sugarcoating. As a coach, he brought that same raw honesty into the locker room and straight to the league office. He called out the NBA's hypocrisy with calm precision, the contradiction of a league that proudly earns $1.5 billion a year from betting partnerships while immediately suspending players the moment gambling controversy surfaces. "You can't have it both ways," Redick argued. He urged the NBA to build what he called tension wires, systems designed to catch trouble before it explodes. His ideas were bold: mandatory cooling-off periods for players flagged as high risk, and AI-powered monitoring systems that could detect unusual betting activity connected to injury leaks or team info. It was classic Redick, logical, composed, and deeply analytical. But while his approach was measured and protective, the next voice to step into the fire wasn't calm, calculated, or cautious. It was explosive. Enter Gilbert Arenas, the man who saw it coming long before anyone else dared to speak up. Where others offered polished PR statements or emotional pleas, Arenas came in with his signature blend of dark humor, defiance, and brutal honesty. He didn't tiptoe, he torched. Arenas, the 3-time All-Star and former NBA scoring champion, has never been afraid of controversy. And this time, he wasn't just commenting from the sidelines. He'd been in the orbit of the same underground scene now under FBI investigation. Back in July 2025, he'd made headlines himself when law enforcement raided a high-stakes poker ring held at his Los Angeles mansion. Though he escaped charges, the ordeal turned him into a walking warning sign, a man who knew firsthand how deep the underground gambling culture ran inside basketball circles. So when the indictments hit, names like Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier splashed across screens, Arenas didn't gasp, didn't stutter, didn't fake surprise. Gilbert Arenas came in hot and furious. On the October 24th episode of his explosive Gil's Arena podcast, he spoke with the energy of a man who'd just been proven right in front of the entire world. Sitting back in his chair, eyes locked on the camera, he kicked things off with trademark bravado. "They can't hold me." It wasn't just confidence, it was vindication. The line was a direct shot at his own 2025 legal scare when investigators found no NBA-related betting in his underground poker games. He'd been cleared, And now, with the arrests of Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, he felt every word of his warnings had come true. Arenas dove straight into the scandal with insider precision and his signature cutting sarcasm. When discussing Rozier's alleged scheme to manipulate his minutes for betting profits, he didn't hold back. "That's not hustle," he scoffed. "That's heartbreak waiting." The line went viral within hours, half joke, half truth. The perfect reflection of Arenas' style. His tone carried a mix of disbelief and disappointment. Frustrated that players would risk everything for pocket change compared to their multi-million-dollar contracts. But when it came to Chauncey Billups, Arenas' tone shifted. There was real empathy there. Both men had Detroit roots. Both had seen the game's darker corners. "Chauncey, my guy," he said, his voice dropping. "You were the face card. They needed you to pack the tables. Ain't no shame in the game till the lenses light up your marks. But now, brother, lawyer up like your life's on the line, because it is." What made Arenas' commentary hit harder than most was his fearless honesty about his own past. He admitted that his underground poker nights had started innocently. Just the boys, cards, and some laughs. But quickly spiraled. As bigger names and bigger money got involved, shady figures started showing up, and soon, federal attention wasn't far behind. His near miss gave him a front-row seat to the very temptations now devouring the NBA from within. He warned that the NBA's betting boom had created a gold rush with no education or limits. The league was raking in billions, yet players had no clue where friendly games ended and felony charges began. And when the indictments dropped, Arenas didn't sound shocked. He sounded vindicated, like a man who'd seen the storm long before anyone else had the courage to say it aloud. Because on October 23rd, the basketball world woke up in disbelief. News broke that Chauncey Billups was allegedly entangled in a mafia-linked gambling scandal. Now that probably meant one thing. He knew, and what came next would shake the basketball world to its core. In this segment, we'll show you never-before-seen footage of NBA players desperately begging Chauncey Billups not to leak their names. A haunting glimpse into the panic that spread through the league in real time. October 23rd, 2025, a date now burned into NBA history forever. The day the game stopped cold and the entire sports world stood in disbelief. What was supposed to be a day of celebration, the start of a brand new NBA season, turned into one of the darkest mornings the league has ever witnessed. While fans were buzzing with excitement, federal agents were already in motion, executing a meticulously planned seismic takedown that would send shockwaves through every locker room in America. This wasn't a minor violation or a player caught breaking curfew. No, this was something far more sinister, far more organized, and far more devastating than anyone had dared to imagine. By sunrise, the headlines had exploded like wildfire across every sports network, social media feed, and morning news segment. The unthinkable had happened. Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups and Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier had been arrested by the FBI. Fans didn't know what to believe. The internet melted down in real time, theories flying faster than the facts could catch up. But this wasn't some routine bust. It was the culmination of a multi-year federal investigation that dug deep into the underworld of professional basketball. What authorities uncovered was chilling. An underground betting network so advanced, so high-tech, and so deeply woven into organized crime that it made even Hollywood's wildest mafia thrillers look tame in comparison. When FBI Director Kash Patel himself stepped up to the podium, flanked by a wall of officials from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, the NYPD, Homeland Security Investigations, and the Waterfront Commission, everyone instantly knew this wasn't just big, it was historic. The air was thick with tension. You could almost feel the weight of what was coming next. The appearance of the FBI director at a press conference is something reserved for only the most extraordinary, game-changing cases. And this was one of them. As Patel began to speak, the full magnitude of the scandal unfolded like a crime thriller playing out live on national television. His tone was steady, but the details were staggering. The kind of revelations that make even seasoned reporters drop their pens. The investigation hadn't uncovered just one criminal network, but two massive, intertwined operations. each one powerful enough on its own to bring down careers, franchises, and maybe even the NBA's credibility itself. The first was codenamed Operation Nothing But Bet, a chilling play on the sport's own slogan. This arm of the investigation centered on insider sports betting within the NBA, where players, staff, and even coaches allegedly leaked sensitive information. Injury updates, lineup changes, and game strategies directly to underground betting rings. Those rings would then place guaranteed prop wagers, cashing in millions with outcomes they already knew in advance. But the second operation, Operation Royal Flush, was even darker, even more elaborate. What authorities described made everyone in that room sit up straight. This wasn't just about shady bets. It was about rigged poker games, mob-backed operations, and systematic manipulation that reached across the entire country. According to Patel, the investigation linked the scheme to 4 of America's most notorious mafia families: the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese families, all allegedly working together in what prosecutors called one of the most sophisticated gambling frauds ever uncovered in U.S. history. The numbers alone were enough to leave jaws on the floor. Over 30 arrests across 11 states, with charges ranging from wire fraud and money laundering to extortion and even armed robbery. The FBI wasn't just rounding up a few gamblers, they were dismantling a nationwide criminal empire. But what sent the biggest shock through the sports world wasn't the number of arrests. It was the names attached to them. These weren't unknown figures or shady outsiders. These were NBA legends, men whose names had been etched into basketball history, now being dragged into one of the darkest scandals the league had ever seen. At the heart of it all stood Chauncey Billups, Mr. Big Shot himself, a 5-time All-Star, the 2004 NBA Finals MVP, the man who led the Detroit Pistons to a championship and earned a reputation for leadership, intelligence, and unshakable composure under pressure. In 2024, he'd been inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, capping off a career built on hard work and respect. And yet, on that fateful morning in October 2025, this same man, now head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, was seen in handcuffs, facing federal charges that could end not just his career, but his freedom for decades. How could someone who'd achieved everything, glory, wealth, legacy, end up at the center of a federal investigation that read like a mob movie script? That question echoed across every sports talk show, every podcast, every fan forum in America. And standing beside his name on the indictment was another, Terry Rozier, the dynamic guard for the Miami Heat. Only 31 years old and right in his prime. Rozier had just signed a $96.3 million contract, was averaging strong numbers, and had solidified himself as a rising star. He had everything to lose. Yet according to federal prosecutors, he'd allegedly thrown it all away for pocket change compared to his massive salary. The accusations were damning. Investigators claimed Rozier had leaked insider information, texting associates before games that he would fake injuries to exit early, allowing his betting partners to cash in on underprop bets tied to his performance. The most infamous example came from a March 23, 2023 game between the Charlotte Hornets and the New Orleans Pelicans. That March 23rd game would go down as the turning point, the night Terry Rozier allegedly crossed a line that would change everything. According to the indictment, Rozier sent a text message to his childhood friend De Niro Laster just hours before tip-off, saying he planned to exit the game early, citing a shoulder injury. It sounded harmless, until you realize what that text really meant. True to his word, Rozier played just 9 minutes and 34 seconds before heading to the bench, clutching his shoulder. What looked like bad luck at the time turned out to be a setup. Behind the scenes, the betting syndicate, armed with his insider tip, had placed over $200,000 on underbets tied to Rozier's points, rebounds, and assists. And when Rozier left the court early, those bets hit big, instantly triggering a massive payout. According to court documents, the cash was later delivered to Rozier's own home, where the group allegedly counted the money together, a chilling moment that blurred the line between NBA stardom and criminal collusion. But then, things got even darker. Within hours of Rozier's arrest hitting the news, social media exploded. Rumors flooded the internet claiming there was secret footage showing NBA players begging Chauncey Billups not to leak their names to the FBI. The idea caught fire instantly. Posts went viral, fan accounts dissected every clip of Billups' past interviews, and wild speculation spread like a digital wildfire. Everyone wanted to know, were there more players involved? Was the scandal bigger than anyone realized? Meme pages, fake DMs, and so-called leaks popped up everywhere, each one claiming to have inside info. Fans named names, tagged stars, and accused entire teams of being part of a betting cover-up. But let's make one thing absolutely clear. None of that footage exists. After combing through official court filings, federal documents, and every major news outlet, there's been zero credible evidence of any such video. No leak, no secret recordings, no footage of NBA players pleading with Billups, nothing. What really happened is far less cinematic, but infinitely more disturbing. The internet simply ran wild with its own imagination, taking real fear, real confusion, and spinning it into conspiracy theater. It's what happens when reality is already shocking enough that people start looking for an even bigger twist. Because the truth, as laid out by federal investigators, is far more terrifying than any rumor. This wasn't just a few players making bad choices. This was a systemic criminal network, operating quietly for years, infiltrating the league from the inside. The scheme relied on influential NBA figures, players, coaches, even executives, serving as what prosecutors chillingly referred to as face cards. Their fame was the bait. Their reputation was the lure. These high-profile names were used to draw in wealthy whales, victims who'd buy into rigged poker games where the outcome was fixed long before the cards hit the table. According to the indictments unsealed on October 23rd, the poker operation alone had defrauded victims of at least $15.7 million, and investigators believe the real number could be much higher. As new witnesses come forward and financial trails continue to unfold, prosecutors say this case could easily balloon into one of the largest sports-related frauds in U.S. history. One victim alone reportedly lost a staggering $1.8 million at one of these exclusive poker games, believing he was part of a fair, friendly, high-stakes match surrounded by NBA icons. In reality, he'd walked straight into a trap. These weren't low-key poker nights tucked away in smoky backrooms. No, these were lavish operations staged in some of the most elite locations in America: sprawling estates in the Hamptons, luxury suites in Las Vegas, penthouses overlooking Manhattan, and private clubs in Miami, where the champagne was cold, but the setup was hot. The victims sat down at tables thinking they were playing real games, testing their skill, reading bluffs, chasing pots, but they never stood a chance. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that every other person at the table was in on the scam. The dealers were rigged, the players were actors, and even the NBA celebrities, the so-called face cards, who gave these events an illusion of legitimacy, were allegedly part of the conspiracy. The glamour of seeing familiar faces, players they'd once cheered for, was what made it so easy to fall for. But behind those smiles was a coordinated machine of deceit, where every hand dealt was predetermined, every lucky win carefully choreographed to bleed the victims dry. Federal prosecutors claim that Chauncey Billups himself participated in at least one of these games back in 2019, during which victims were defrauded out of $50,000. The money, according to court filings, was later split between the dealers, organizers, and celebrity participants who helped sell the illusion. But that's not where Billups' alleged involvement stopped. Not even close. The unsealed documents hint at a deeper role. Investigators identified a mysterious figure referred to only as co-conspirator number 8, described as an Oregon resident, a former NBA player who competed from 1997 to 2014, and a current head coach since 2021. Every detail fits one man, Chauncey Billups. If these allegations prove true, then Chauncey Billups may have done something even more shocking, allegedly tipping off insiders that his Portland Trail Blazers would rest key players before a crucial matchup against the Chicago Bulls on March 24th, 2023. The result? A 28-point blowout loss for Portland and a massive pay payday for the syndicate that had placed perfectly timed bets on the outcome. That was the breadcrumb that led investigators deeper. And once federal prosecutors started following the money, what they uncovered was far bigger than anyone could have imagined. A sophisticated criminal machine years in the making. It was a hybrid operation that merged cutting-edge tech, mafia discipline, and celebrity power into one of the most elaborate fraud networks ever tied to professional sports. The operation functioned like a well-oiled engine, equal parts digital espionage and old-school mob muscle. Court filings described a network built with military-level coordination, using encrypted apps, proxy betting accounts, and offshore servers to hide its tracks. The technology side handled the precision, tracking player data, injuries, and timing bets down to the second, while the underworld side enforced loyalty the old-fashioned way, with threats, intimidation, and cash flow control. At the heart of it all was the poker scheme, which prosecutors say had been running since at least 2019. This wasn't random chaos. It was a scripted operation, a high society trap that pulled in the ultra-wealthy with glitz and glamour, only to bleed them dry from the inside. Each member of the operation had a defined role. The recruiters who lured in the whales, the dealers who controlled the outcomes, the enforcers who made sure nobody talked, and the face cards, the famous athletes whose star power made the scam look legitimate. Victims, often referred to in coded chats as fish, never stood a chance. They walked into those glittering penthouses thinking they were playing poker with their sports heroes, unaware they were sitting in a tank full of sharks. Every smile, every shuffle, every casual joke at the table was part of a carefully staged illusion designed to drain them completely. These weren't hustlers working shady street corners. These were organized criminals with resources, reach, and technology the average person didn't even know existed. They had ties to some of the most powerful and feared mafia families in American history. The revelation that 4 major La Cosa Nostra families, the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families, had joined forces on this operation sent shockwaves through both law enforcement and the sports world. That kind of alliance is almost unheard of in the history of American organized crime. Traditionally, these families run their own turf, their own rackets, and their own money pipelines. They compete, they clash, and when they cross paths, it usually ends in blood, not business. So for all 4 families to work together under one coordinated umbrella, that spoke volumes about just how massive the profits must have been. Federal investigators believe the money pouring through these rigged poker games was so astronomical that even the mafia decided it was smarter to pool resources, share tech, and split earnings rather than risk internal war. That's how lucrative this underground empire had become. It united crime families that hadn't shared a table in decades. According to the indictments, at least 13 defendants from the poker scheme had direct ties to organized crime, not just associates or hangers-on, but actual made men, capos, captains, and soldiers who'd sworn blood oaths to La Cosa Nostra itself. These weren't street hustlers pretending to be mobsters. They were the real deal, old-school mafia muscle dressed in modern suits, mixing with athletes, celebrities, and millionaires under the glittering lights of high society. And at the center of their playbook sat the face cards, the public bait that made the entire scam work. That's where Chauncey Billups allegedly came in. His presence was the ultimate endorsement, the celebrity stamp that made every poker night seem legitimate. Imagine it. You're a billionaire investor, a Silicon Valley founder, or a hedge fund mogul who loves the thrill of a private poker game. You get a whisper. Billups is playing tonight. Instantly, you're in. Because sitting across the table from an NBA legend, a Hall of Famer, feels like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The kind of thing money should buy. When you get that kind of exclusive invitation, a private, high-stakes poker game where Chauncey Billups is supposedly sitting at the table, your guard instantly drops. You don't question it. You think, this has to be legit. Why would a Hall of Fame coach risk everything on something shady? And that's exactly what the organizers wanted you to think. Billups's reputation was the bait, the hook that made the trap look like a luxury experience instead of a criminal setup. But he wasn't the only NBA insider allegedly used to give the operation a veneer of legitimacy. Prosecutors also named Damon DJ Jones, a former NBA sharpshooter and assistant coach with stints on teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers and Miami Heat, as a key figure tied to both the poker ring and the insider betting scheme. According to court filings, Jones allegedly acted as the bridge between the two worlds, feeding inside information about player injuries, locker room whispers, and team strategies directly to the betting network, while also appearing at poker games to reinforce credibility. His recognizable face and easy charm made the entire setup look authentic to the untrained eye. But behind the scenes, he was allegedly helping the mob cash in. And then came the part that blew investigators' minds: the technology. This wasn't amateur hour cheating. It was Hollywood-level espionage built into casino hardware. Federal agents confiscated a series of custom-modified shuffling machines, specifically 2 Decimate 2 units that looked perfectly ordinary from the outside. But inside, a nightmare of engineering brilliance. Hidden within the machines were miniature cameras, wireless transmitters, and encrypted data relays. Every time the cards were shuffled, the internal cameras captured the exact order of the deck. That feed was then transmitted in real time to a small monitoring device disguised as a phone or smartwatch used by one of the conspirators. This allowed the operators to track every card, every ace, every king, every bluff, before it even hit the table. It turned the entire game into a scripted performance where the victims never stood a chance. The so-called poker pros knew exactly who would win, when to fold, and how to milk their marks dry, all while sipping champagne and laughing like it was a friendly night among millionaires. These weren't your average casino machines, they were technological weapons disguised as poker equipment. According to federal investigators, the modified shuffling machines were equipped with RFID chips and barcode scanning sensors capable of reading the entire deck in real time. Every shuffle, every cut, every deal. The system knew it all. The data didn't stay there either. It was instantly transmitted to someone sitting off-site, sometimes in a hidden back room, other times in an entirely different building. This individual, ominously referred to in court documents as the quarterback, could see exactly which cards every player at the table was holding. Imagine that, a puppet master watching the whole game unfold from afar, controlling every move without ever touching a card. Once the quarterback had the information, they'd send coded messages back to the conspirators at the table using encrypted phones, concealed earpieces, or even subtle hand signals that looked completely natural to outsiders. Every smirk, every nod, every tap of a chip was part of an elaborate communication system choreographed to perfection. But it didn't stop there. The technology behind this operation went from clever to downright diabolical. Some of the tables themselves were reportedly outfitted with X-ray panels hidden beneath the felt, allowing insiders wearing special glasses or using concealed micro cameras to literally see through the cards. To the victims, it looked like an elegant poker table. To the cheaters, it was an open book. Imagine sitting there, gripping your winning hand, completely unaware that every single person around you could see your cards as clearly as if they were face up. That's the kind of horror federal agents compared it to a slow-motion robbery happening right under the bright lights of luxury. And just when you think it couldn't get more twisted, it did. The conspirators also used marked decks paired with special contact lenses that revealed invisible ink markings to the wearers, turning a normal deck into a secret code book only the insiders could read. Even the poker chip trays were weaponized, equipped with tiny cameras that photographed each card as it was dealt or discarded. Every angle was covered. Every possible advantage was exploited. There was no such thing as luck at these tables. Every hand was predetermined, every outcome fixed. The whales, the ultra-wealthy victims, never stood a chance. And if by some miracle one of them actually started winning, the crew had that handled too. The game would suddenly be paused due to a technical issue, or the victim would be charmed into playing just one more hand, long enough for the insiders to flip the script and reclaim their temporary losses. And what happened when the victims couldn't pay up? That's where the story turned from high-stakes deception to pure menace. The moment the money stopped flowing, the mafia muscle came out. And this is where things got dark, brutal, and deadly serious. The 4 crime families behind the operation, Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese, weren't just silent investors. They were the enforcers, the shadow authority that made sure every dollar owed was collected one way or another. When victims tried to walk away or claim they were broke, the mob handled it the only way they knew how: through fear, intimidation, and violence. Federal indictments revealed chilling examples of what happened to those who defied the syndicate. In one documented case, a victim who refused to pay his debt was tracked down by mafia enforcers and threatened until he coughed up the cash. In another, things escalated even further. A man was robbed at gunpoint, not for money, but to recover one of the rigged shuffling machines that investigators say the group was terrified might end up in FBI hands. That machine wasn't just evidence. It was the smoking gun that could expose the entire criminal network. This wasn't your typical white-collar scam where everyone cuts deals behind closed doors. No. This was organized crime in its rawest, ugliest form. The kind where unpaid debts were handled with baseball bats, threats, and midnight visits. The kind where business was settled in back alleys, not boardrooms. But as terrifying as the poker operation was, the second half of this empire might have been even more dangerous because it reached directly into the NBA itself. Federal prosecutors say the sports betting branch of the operation ran from December 2022 through March 2024, quietly manipulating at least 7 NBA games using insider information that should have never left the locker room. It was a perfect storm of greed and access, where the right text, a whispered injury update, or a leaked lineup change could swing millions of dollars overnight. The business model behind it was simple. The sports betting operation might have sounded complex, but the core idea was brutally simple. Find someone with access, someone on the inside. It could be a player, a coach, a trainer, or even a staff member who knew what was going on before the public did. All it took was one text, one leak, one whisper, and the syndicate had an edge that guaranteed them money every single time. Once the insider passed along the info, which players were secretly injured, who was being rested, or which team planned a surprise lineup change, the bettors would swoop in, placing massive wagers on prop bets with guaranteed outcomes before anyone else even knew what was happening. It wasn't luck. It was orchestrated fraud, dressed up as ordinary gambling. The clearest, most damning example came from Terry Rozier's alleged involvement, the same case that first cracked the lid open on this entire scheme. On March 23, 2023, while still playing for the Charlotte Hornets, Rozier allegedly sent a text message to his childhood friend De Niro Laster, tipping him off that he'd be leaving the game early, claiming a shoulder injury. But according to prosecutors, this wasn't a real injury, not even close. It was a pre-planned exit, designed specifically to manipulate betting markets. The scheme was textbook. Rozier would pull himself out early, while his insiders, armed with that knowledge, would place over $200,000 in underbets on his stats, betting that he'd score fewer points, grab fewer rebounds, and rack up fewer assists than expected. And when the game started, everything unfolded exactly as scripted. Rozier played just 9 minutes and 34 seconds, scored only a handful of points, and then walked off holding his shoulder. The bets all hit perfectly, generating tens of thousands in profits for the syndicate that had placed them. It was clean, quiet, and almost untraceable until the FBI pieced it all together. That one night became ground zero for the entire investigation, the smoking gun that exposed how deep the rot went. Now, the footage from that March 23rd game has gone viral, racking up millions of views as fans, journalists, and analysts dissect every frame like a crime scene. Viewers have slowed it down, zoomed in, and replayed it from every angle, studying Rozier's body language, the timing of his exit, even his facial expressions, searching for signs of deception. Was he grimacing in real pain or just acting? Sports commentators have debated endlessly, with half arguing that Rozier looked genuinely hurt, and the other half claiming his performance was too convenient to be real. The internet has turned it into a full-blown detective case, frame-by-frame analysis and all, as the public tries to answer the question the FBI already believes it has. Was Terry Rozier truly injured? Or was his exit that night scripted down to the second by one of the most sophisticated gambling schemes in NBA history? What makes the Terry Rozier case especially explosive is that the NBA had already investigated him for this exact same incident back in 2023. At the time, major sportsbooks like DraftKings had flagged unusual betting patterns surrounding Rozier's stats, his early exit, the sudden flood of prop bets, and the suspiciously consistent under outcomes. The league launched an internal probe, interviewing staff, reviewing game footage, and analyzing betting data. But after weeks of digging, the NBA publicly stated that it didn't have enough hard evidence to take disciplinary action. Rozier was effectively cleared, free to continue playing while whispers of impropriety quietly faded away. But federal authorities weren't so quick to let it go. Unlike the NBA, they had tools the league could never access: wiretaps, subpoena power, text logs, and financial tracing. With those in hand, the FBI built a far more comprehensive case, connecting digital breadcrumbs, phone records, and betting transactions that the NBA's internal investigators had no jurisdiction to uncover. And once they pulled that thread, the entire fabric of the scheme started unraveling. Because Rozier's case, as shocking as it was, turned out to be just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. According to the unsealed indictments, multiple NBA games between 2022 and 2024 were allegedly manipulated using insider information. Passed quietly from locker rooms and training facilities into private betting rings, the documents named Damon DJ Jones as a central player in the network. Once an NBA assistant coach, Jones allegedly sold insider information about injuries and player availability to trusted contacts within the betting world. Prosecutors claim Jones leaked details about LeBron James's unreported foot injury before the Lakers matchup against the Milwaukee Bucks on February 9, 2023. Information that allowed insiders to place precise bets before the public even knew LeBron wasn't 100%. He also allegedly tipped bettors before a January 15, 2024 game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, providing details about which Lakers would be active and which were sitting, another goldmine for pregame betting activity. And it didn't stop there. The indictments describe a separate leak from an unnamed Orlando Magic player who allegedly shared inside details about the Cleveland Cavaliers lineup before an April 2023 game. That one leak allowed bettors to place perfect wagers on the point spread after both teams decided to rest their starters, a move the public didn't learn about until minutes before tip-off. But the most explosive allegation came from co-conspirator number 8, believed by nearly everyone following the case to be Chauncey Billups. The description matched him exactly. An Oregon resident, a former NBA player from 1997 to 2014, and a head coach since 2021. According to prosecutors, co-conspirator number 8 allegedly tipped off insiders that the Portland Trail Blazers were planning to rest their star trio, Damian Lillard, Jerami Grant, and Anthony Simons, before their March 24, 2023 showdown against the Chicago Bulls. The result? The Blazers were blown out by 28 points. Those who'd been tipped off early about Portland's lineup changes didn't just get lucky, they cleaned up big time. With inside knowledge that Damian Lillard, Jerami Grant, and Anthony Simons would all be sitting out, the syndicate pounced on spread bets and under totals, cashing in before sportsbooks could even adjust the odds. When the Trailblazers lost by 28 points, it wasn't just a defeat on the court. It was a payday for criminals who'd already known the outcome hours in advance. And that's when the storm finally broke. The October 23rd arrests detonated like a bomb inside the NBA, sending the league into full-blown crisis mode. Within hours, the league issued an official statement. "We take these allegations with the utmost seriousness. The integrity of our game remains our highest priority." It sounded calm and measured, but behind closed doors, chaos reigned. According to insiders, panic rippled through league headquarters, team offices, and even the Players Association. Phones rang non-stop, lawyers were summoned, executives scrambled to distance their teams from the scandal as public outrage exploded online. Everyone wanted answers, and fast. The NBA wasted no time taking action. Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier were both placed on indefinite leave pending investigation. The Portland Trail Blazers quickly announced that assistant coach Tiago Splitter would step in as interim head coach, while the Miami Heat confirmed that Rozier would not play until the legal proceedings were resolved. These weren't symbolic suspensions or PR gestures. They were career-ending moves in motion. Depending on how the federal cases unfolded, both men could be permanently banned from professional basketball. The NBA's rulebook leaves no ambiguity when it comes to gambling. The league's constitution and bylaws, particularly Article 35, gives the commissioner sweeping authority to discipline or permanently ban any player, coach, or staff member found guilty of gambling-related offenses. The message is crystal clear. If you compromise the integrity of the game, you're done. And the league doesn't just threaten, it enforces. The precedent was set just months earlier in April 2024 when Jonte Porter, a two-way player for the Toronto Raptors, became the first NBA athlete in modern history to receive a lifetime ban for gambling violations. Porter's case mirrored what prosecutors now describe in chilling detail about Rare's alleged behavior. He was caught deliberately underperforming, leaving games early, and sharing inside information so that betting syndicates could profit from underwagers tied to his own stats. If Terry Rozier is convicted on the mountain of federal charges stacked against him, including wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering, it won't just end his career, it'll erase it entirely. Under the NBA's bylaws, a conviction would trigger an automatic lifetime ban, instantly voiding his contract and saving the Miami Heat roughly $26.6 million in future salary obligations. For a player still in his prime, that's not just a financial hit, that's a catastrophic fall from grace. In a matter of months, Rozier could go from a highly paid NBA star, living the dream every young athlete chases, to a convicted felon, banned from ever stepping foot on an NBA court again. A once promising career reduced to a headline, a cautionary tale, and a permanent stain on league history. For Chauncey Billups, the picture looks slightly different, but no less devastating. As a coach, rather than a player, he faces different internal consequences under league policy, but his professional future still hangs by a thread. While he might avoid the league's formal lifetime ban designation reserved for active players, his situation remains just as dire. If the allegations hold up in court, the Portland Trail Blazers would have every reason to terminate his contract, and the NBA could still impose a multi-year suspension under its operations manual. That would effectively make Billups radioactive in the eyes of every front office in the league. No team would risk hiring a coach under federal investigation for gambling and fraud. It's a tragic twist for a man whose reputation was once bulletproof, a respected leader who spent 17 seasons earning the nickname Mr. Big Shot for his calm under pressure. Now, that same name is being dragged through courtroom filings and FBI reports. His legacy, carefully built through championship rings, mentorship, and public goodwill, could be shattered forever if prosecutors prove their case. And make no mistake, the legal stakes here are enormous. Federal wire fraud and money laundering conspiracy charges each carry maximum sentences of up to 20 years per count. Even if neither man receives the maximum and even if plea deals are struck, the reality remains grim. Both are staring down the barrel of real prison time, potentially years behind bars. Prosecutors have been unapologetically clear about their intentions. In their words, these aren't minor violations or technicalities. These are direct attacks on the integrity of professional sports. They vowed to pursue significant penalties, not just to punish the accused, but to send a message to the entire sports world. The NBA community's reaction to the scandal was a storm of disbelief, outrage, and heartbreak. On TNT's Inside the NBA, the legendary panel, Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, and Kenny Smith, didn't hold back. The energy in that studio was tense, heavy, and raw. This wasn't just another segment. It was a reckoning. When Shaq spoke, the tone shifted instantly. His words carried a weight only a Hall of Famer could bring. You could see the disappointment in his eyes as he admitted that gambling temptations are real, that he'd been in rooms, around people, and in moments where the opportunity to cross that line was right there in front of him. But he said he always stopped himself because, in his words, every player knows the rules. Every player knows the consequences. Shaq didn't sugarcoat it. He called it a tragedy, not just for the league, but for the players and coaches who had spent their whole lives building something that could now vanish in an instant. His voice cracked slightly when he talked about integrity, how one bad decision can erase decades of hard work. It wasn't judgment, it was pain. Then came Charles Barkley, and as always, he cut straight through the emotion with fiery honesty. He didn't mince a single word, calling the defendants stupid for gambling away everything they had for pocket change compared to their massive contracts. His bluntness hit hard. You're making $26 million a year and you risk it all for $50,000? $100,000? That's not addiction, that's stupidity. Barkley's rant went viral almost immediately, clipped and shared across social media. Fans flooded the comments, echoing his outrage. How could someone like Terry Rozier, sitting on a $96 million deal, throw it all away for a bet that wouldn't even buy him a new car? And why would Chauncey Billups, a Hall of Famer with one of the most respected careers in modern basketball, get anywhere near mafia-backed poker games? While Charles Barkley thundered about stupidity and greed, Kenny Smith brought a calmer, but no less powerful, take to the table. He suggested that what everyone was seeing might not just be arrogance or carelessness, it could also be addiction. A force that doesn't discriminate, not by wealth, not by fame, not by status. Kenny reminded viewers that gambling addiction can make even the most successful people act irrationally. When that compulsion grabs you, he said, logic disappears. He referenced FBI Director Kash Patel's statement, which mentioned one victim who lost $1.8 million in those rigged poker games, a staggering loss that clearly wasn't about need, but about a sickness of compulsion. That single example, Smith argued, proved this wasn't just about people chasing easy money. Some were chasing the same thrill that had already destroyed them. His comments reignited the debate between Barkley's black and white logic and Smith's empathy-driven realism, a debate that cuts to the heart of this entire scandal. Is this about greed, stupidity, addiction, or something darker? The uncomfortable truth is that it's probably all of the above. Every individual caught in the web had their own reason, their own weakness. Some might have been genuine addicts, drowning in the same psychological spiral as casino regulars who can't stop chasing losses. Others, blinded by greed, saw a loophole in the system, a quick grab for easy money, and assumed they'd never get caught. And then there were the ones with mafia connections, who weren't victims of compulsion or greed, but architects of manipulation, viewing NBA insiders as useful pawns in a much bigger game. But no matter the motive, the fallout was the same, a complete breakdown in trust between the league, its fans, and the very foundation of professional sports. The timing of it all made it even more explosive. This scandal hit during an era when sports betting is booming across America like never before. In 2018, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, SPA, effectively legalizing sports gambling nationwide and opening the floodgates for a brand new billion-dollar industry. In the years that followed, the NBA, along with every major U.S. sports league, dove in headfirst, partnering with DraftKings, FanDuel, and BetMGM, turning gambling into a polished, corporate-friendly part of the sports experience. What used to be whispered about in Vegas was suddenly on the screen during every timeout, betting odds, parlay promos, and live win percentages flashing right beside player stats. It was marketed as harmless fun, a way for fans to engage with the game. But now, with these revelations, the question looms large. Did the leagues open Pandora's box? Because while those deals brought in hundreds of millions in ad revenue, sponsorships, and data licensing, the NBA may have tried to draw a clean line between competition and commerce, but that line has now become almost invisible. What used to be a game built purely on skill, strategy, and heart has slowly morphed into a gambling ecosystem where every shot, foul, and injury carries a price tag. Turn on any broadcast today, and it's impossible to miss. Betting odds plastered across the screen, real-time prop bet updates flashing beside player stats, and commentators casually mentioning how a missed free throw could swing the line. What used to be harmless fandom has evolved into a high-stakes obsession, with millions of fans watching the scoreboard not for love of the sport, but for the size of their payout. And it's easier than ever. With a few taps on a phone, anyone can place a $5 bet or a $5,000 gamble in seconds. The accessibility is intoxicating and dangerous. As one analyst put it, it's not just basketball anymore, it's a marketplace. And that marketplace just blew up in the league's face. Critics are now arguing that the NBA, along with other major sports leagues, invited this chaos by embracing gambling partnerships too quickly, too deeply, and without building enough guardrails. By merging fandom with betting, they blurred the boundary between passion and profit, creating the perfect breeding ground for this scandal to unfold. Commissioner Adam Silver has defended the league's stance, insisting that the NBA took precautions, monitoring systems, integrity units, and mandatory education programs designed to prevent this very thing. But as the FBI's findings have proven, those safeguards weren't enough. Not when you're up against a multi-year conspiracy involving players, coaches, organized crime, and cutting-edge cheating technology. So now the question isn't just what went wrong, it's what happens next. Sources inside the league say new measures are already in motion. Expect to see stricter injury reporting rules, forcing teams to disclose player availability earlier and with more transparency, closing the window where insider leaks can move betting lines. The NBA is also rumored to be reviewing prop betting limits, particularly for two-way players and low-minute reserves, the same loophole that allowed Jonte Porter's scheme to flourish before his lifetime ban. Beyond that, lawmakers and league executives alike are pushing for federal sports betting regulations, aiming to unify the patchwork of state laws and clearly define what counts as illegal manipulation versus legitimate wagering. Because right now, the line is too thin and too easy to cross. And the story? It's far from over. Federal prosecutors have made it crystal clear that more indictments are on the way, as investigators expand their search into possible college basketball ties and even other professional sports where similar insider operations might be hiding in plain sight. The FBI has issued a public call encouraging anyone with knowledge of illegal gambling or game manipulation to step forward, a signal that there are still pieces missing and names unspoken. For now, the NBA stands at a crossroads, forced to rebuild not just its image, but the trust of millions of fans who suddenly aren't sure what's real anymore. And as the dust settles, one chilling truth remains. The deeper the money runs, the darker the game becomes. That wraps up today's story. If you found this breakdown as wild as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the NBA can recover from this? Or has the game we love already changed forever? I'll see you on the next one.